"You expecting a parade, Grandpa?" a salesman sneered, pointing at Walter's worn combat boots. The old veteran just wanted a truck, but what he got was mockery. Little did they know, a much larger convoy was coming. Walter Briggs, at 78, moved with a quiet dignity. His steps had slowed over the years, but the hands that had once skillfully reassembled damaged vehicles under relentless fire in the Persian Gulf and patched convoy trucks during the fierce battles of Iraq, remained steady. A retired Marine Corps combat engineer, he had served through 2 brutal wars before finally hanging up his uniform, though never his boots. Those boots had traversed scorching desert sands, muddy Iraqi roads, and now, the familiar, quiet streets of Millbrook. He lived in a modest home with a small workshop, where neighborhood children often brought their broken bicycles. He'd fix them without charge, often sharing stories about machines, never wars. The local kids called him Mr. Fix-It. Adults would just nod politely, few understanding the silent strength those calloused hands still held, even as arthritis claimed some of their once fine dexterity. For nearly 2 decades, his faded blue Chevy pickup had been his unwavering companion, reliably shuttling him to his volunteer work and the occasional fishing trip. But last Tuesday, after faithfully logging 287,000 miles, its transmission finally surrendered. Walter had been meticulously saving for this day, not enough for something brand new, but certainly enough for a dependable vehicle that would get him to the VA hospital and back without worry. Mackenzie Auto Plaza, a beacon of gleaming chrome and streaming pennants, sat conspicuously on the edge of town. Walter had calculated the precise distance, 1.8 miles from his front door. That morning, he laced up his worn combat boots with the same methodical precision he had used every morning since 1968, and began his walk under the warm California sun. By the time he reached the sprawling lot, a light sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead. Walter paused at the entrance, straightened his plain, olive-green button-up shirt, and stepped onto the polished asphalt. His gaze immediately landed on the object of his quest, a 4-year-old Ram 1500, parked discreetly in the back row, away from the flashy showroom models. Near the main entrance, 2 young salesmen, their matching polo shirts crisp and their smiles practiced, tracked his slow, deliberate movement. Their whispers, carried on the gentle breeze, were followed by poorly concealed chuckles. "Look what wandered in from the History Channel," the taller one muttered, nudging his colleague and adjusting his designer sunglasses perched on perfectly gelled hair. Walter heard them, but continued his systematic examination of the truck. He crouched to check the tires, peered underneath at the chassis, and gently tested the tailgate. Each movement was precise, deliberate, the assessment of a man who understood machinery at its very core. The taller salesman sauntered over, a smirk playing on his lips. "You know this ain't a museum, right? These trucks are for drivers." Walter straightened up slowly, his joints protesting after bending to check the wheel wells. "Just wanted to ask the price," he said quietly, his voice low and calm. From the showroom doorway, another salesman called out, his voice laced with condescension, "Depends. Is he paying with ration cards or war stories?" Laughter, sharp and cruel, rippled across the lot. The first salesman, emboldened, pulled out his phone. He angled it deliberately, capturing Walter's weathered face and his worn boots in the frame. "Lost in time," he announced to his colleagues, clearly intending to make a mockery of the elderly veteran. Walter's expression never changed. He simply nodded once, turned without another word, and walked back toward the lot entrance, his boots making soft, steady sounds against the pavement. No one noticed his right hand, how it trembled slightly, not from age or infirmity, but from the quiet, immense dignity of restraint. Inside the air-conditioned showroom, a receptionist had witnessed the entire exchange through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, momentarily paused. She glanced toward the sales manager's office, then back to her screen, ultimately deciding that speaking up wasn't worth the trouble. A couple browsed brochures nearby, exchanged looks. "Probably just another old guy wasting time," the husband muttered. "My dad does the same thing. Window shops cars he'll never buy." Outside, the video of Walter had already made its way to the sales team's group chat. "Someone tell Grandpa the VFW is 2 miles down the road," one comment read. Another replied, "He should be grateful he's still walking. My granddad can't even make it to the mailbox without his scooter." Walter didn't return home. Instead, he settled onto a worn wooden bench at the small strip mall directly across from the dealership, beneath the faded awning of a closed laundromat. From his pocket, he withdrew a small, leather-bound notebook, its edges rounded and softened from years of constant handling. The pages inside were filled with his neat, precise mechanical handwriting, a meticulous trait developed from decades of labeling parts and signing requisition forms for equipment in the field. The first page displayed a carefully noted list of Ram trucks with their detailed specifications. The second contained his budget calculations, each number precisely aligned in columns, a testament to his careful planning. He turned to the third page, where a black and white photograph was secured with a rusted paperclip. The image showed a much younger Walter, perhaps in his late 20s, standing beside another Marine in a dusty, war-torn landscape. Both men were grinning, despite the unmistakable chaos evident in the background, the twisted metal of what had once been a supply truck, smoke still curling from the wreck. Tucked carefully behind the photograph was a letter, the paper now thin and fragile from repeated folding and unfolding. The handwriting was bold, urgent, scrawled in what looked like a moment of intense pressure. "Briggs, if I make it home, I owe you a truck. That's not a promise. That's a debt. You crawled under burning metal so we could drive out. Some debts can never be repaid, but I'll spend my life trying. Lieutenant J. Morris." The memory surfaced unbidden, the ambush outside Fallujah, the convoy's lead vehicle disabled by an IED. Walter had slid beneath the burning transport, ignoring the searing heat against his back as he worked with desperate speed to repair the axle and steering column. Above him, Lieutenant Morris provided relentless cover fire, shouting encouragement as bullets pinged off metal inches from Walter's hands. They had made it out, all of them. Walter reached for his phone, not a smartphone, but a basic flip model with oversized buttons, a relic from a simpler time. He dialed a number from memory and waited as it connected. Morris, a crisp, familiar voice answered on the other end. "Time to collect on that promise," Walter said simply. A pause. "Briggs? Where are you?" Walter gave the location, then added, "No rush." He closed the phone and returned it to his pocket. Inside the dealership, the video of Walter was making its rounds, accompanied by increasingly cruel commentary in the sales team's group chat. "What's he going to do, call in backup from 1945, one message read. Another chimed in, "Maybe we'll throw in a cane holder with the truck." A third added, "Should have asked if he needs the senior citizen's discount on oil changes." They mocked his boots, his age, and his silence, utterly unaware of who was listening, and the unfairness they were perpetuating. Just 25 minutes later, the atmosphere in Mackenzie Auto Plaza shifted dramatically, like the air before a violent storm. First came a low rumble, distant at first, then growing steadily louder. It was the kind of sound that vibrates deep in your chest before it even reaches your ears. Heads instinctively turned toward the vast showroom windows. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Outside, 5 military vehicles approached in perfect, synchronized formation. 2 desert tan Humvees led the impressive procession, followed by 2 heavy tactical support trucks with canvas-covered beds. Bringing up the rear, a sleek, matte black SUV with government plates and tinted windows added to the imposing sight. The convoy pulled into the dealership lot with military precision, each vehicle stopping in perfect alignment, their engines idling with a powerful hum. The showroom emptied as salespeople and customers alike poured outside, confusion and raw curiosity overriding their previous mockery and indifference. From the Humvees emerged 8 formidable Marine corpsmen in combat fatigues, their faces impassive, their posture rigid. They positioned themselves in a loose, yet unyielding perimeter, standing at parade rest, radiating an aura of silent authority. From the tactical trucks, for more uniformed personnel deployed, each carrying what appeared to be heavy, official-looking document cases. The black SUV's door opened last, with a soft thud. A man stepped out, mid-40s, lean and sharp in a perfectly pressed Marine Corps Service blue uniform, adorned with the shining insignia of a colonel. His movements were economical, deliberate, the calibrated efficiency of someone accustomed to absolute command. He surveyed the bewildered lot before walking directly toward the showroom entrance. The sea of people parted instinctively before him, like water before a ship's bow. "Where's the man with the boots?" he asked, his voice carrying across the sudden, stunned silence with undeniable authority. No one answered immediately. The receptionist, clutching her tablet like a fragile shield, finally gestured with a trembling hand toward the bench across the street, where Walter still sat, observing the unfolding proceedings with an almost serene detachment. The officer spotted him and walked over, the entire crowd trailing at a respectful distance, cell phones raised to capture whatever dramatic turn was about to unfold. "Walter Briggs, sir," the colonel said, rendering a perfect, crisp salute, his eyes locked on the veteran. "Colonel Jonathan Morris. I told you I owed you a truck, and I never forgot." Walter, despite his age, stood straighter, his own back unwavering. "Good to see you, Morris. Looks like you did all right after all." Morris allowed himself a brief, almost imperceptible smile before his expression hardened, becoming a mask of resolute authority. He turned to address the gathered dealership staff, his gaze specifically fixing on the taller salesman who had spearheaded the mockery. "This man," Morris said, his voice pitched to carry across the hushed lot, resonating with a quiet intensity, "patched my convoy under fire when others said it couldn't be done. He crawled through burning desert sand so all of us, could come home." He gestured with a precise movement toward Walter's worn boots. "The boots you laughed at? They walked farther than any of you will ever drive in a lifetime." The taller salesman paled visibly, his previous arrogance replaced by a clear, undeniable fear. "Sir, we didn't know," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Morris cut him off with a sharp, dismissive gesture. "You didn't care. That's worse." He nodded to one of the Marine Corpsmen, who approached with a set of keys gleaming in his hand. Another Marine Corpsman expertly drove the Ram 1500 Walter had been examining from its spot in the back row, pulling it smoothly to the very front of the showroom, directly in front of the stunned crowd. "Full maintenance package included, sir," Morris said to Walter, his voice softening slightly, a hint of respect evident. "And my unit took the liberty of some upgrades. Reinforced suspension, extended warranty, top-of-the-line navigation system." He handed over a thick folder. "All paid in full." Walter accepted the keys, turning them over slowly in his weathered hands. The entire dealership watched in stunned, incredulous silence. He looked up, his gaze traveling across the faces of those who had mocked him, landing finally on the salesman who'd filmed him. "Respect doesn't cost anything," Walter said quietly, his voice carrying surprising weight in the sudden quiet. "But it sure changes everything." With that, he turned and walked toward his new truck, the Marine Corpsman forming an impromptu honor guard as he passed. At the vehicle, Morris and every uniformed person present rendered a crisp, synchronized salute, not to his rank, but to his undeniable worth, his silent heroism. By sunset, the video had spread far beyond the dealership's private group chat. New footage, titled "Veteran Mocked at Dealership, Honored with Full Military Convoy," accumulated millions of views within hours. Veterans organizations shared it with captions about the crucial importance of respect and recognition for those who served. Military families commented with their own deeply personal stories of returned soldiers facing dismissal, prejudice, and blatant disrespect in civilian life. Mackenzie Auto Plaza's owner, inundated with furious calls and negative reviews, saw the viral footage before nightfall. He immediately issued a public, profusely apologetic statement. The salesmen involved were suspended indefinitely, their careers undoubtedly ruined by their callous actions. By morning, a new sign, boldly emblazoned, appeared prominently at the dealership entrance: "Veterans served here with honor." It was a visible, tangible sign of a changed corporate culture, a forced recognition of a lesson learned the hard way. Walter himself said nothing to the eager reporters who knocked on his door. He simply went about his routine, unflustered, fixing young Henderson's bicycle chain, helping Mrs. Wilkins jumpstart her old sedan, and driving his new Ram 1500 to the grocery store without any fanfare or self-importance. The only visible change to his humble existence was the small, understated decal that quietly appeared on his back window, Semper Fidelis. Still standing. 1 week later, a matte black SUV, far less conspicuous than the Convoy, pulled up to Walter's driveway. Colonel Jonathan Morris stepped out, this time in civilian clothes, carrying a container of gourmet coffee and a specialized oil for Walter's workshop tools. They sat together on the worn front porch, speaking little, finding comfort in the shared silence. No cameras recorded this moment. No social media celebrated it. Just two soldiers, separated by years and rank, but connected by something far stronger than time or circumstance, a shared history, a profound understanding, and a deep, unspoken respect. As evening approached, casting long, peaceful shadows across the neatly manicured lawn, Morris finally broke the comfortable silence. "Thank you for staying ready," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the horizon, even when the world stopped watching. Walter nodded, understanding filling the space between their words. Some things didn't need elaborate explanations, like boots that had walked through history, like promises kept against all odds, like respect, freely given, finally returned. If you believe some footsteps deserve more than mockery, comment respect below and share this story to honor those who serve. Share and subscribe to Steel Heart Stories for more tales of courage and integrity.